Okay, let's go ahead and get into the stock market technical analysis. We'll use the charts to be our guide. We're going to look for broad market analysis on the triple Qs, the tech sector. Obviously, we'll need to take a look at Nvidia. That one's getting smoked today, so we'll want to look at that. And then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Drop me a thumbs up if you're new. Hit the subscribe button and follow along. And then additionally, if you want to join the private member group, it's $5 a month. You can cancel anytime. I'm commenting and putting additional charts and market insights within that private member group. So check it out if you're interested. Link in the description below. Okay, so triple Qs, guys, we are continuing to sell down. The big thing, the big takeaway, and I talked about this in the last week's videos, was last week was vacation trading. It was holiday trading, super low volume, no market consensus. So we saw a lot of chop and whips and algos playing games, but in general, no big heavy volume. Today we come back and there's more volume because we have some of the institutions kind of coming back, from vacation. Now, I'm not seeing huge volumes, so it's not, there's an hour left. I'm still not seeing the kind of volume that tells me that this sell-off that we're seeing today is going to stick. We might see a rally right around current levels, but just keep in mind that as the week continues, and especially next week, because next week's really a full week, we should have pretty much all the major players back at their desks. So, on triple Qs, more selling, obviously, today. Let's narrow it down to the hourly chart. You can see, I did mark out this small bullish falling wedge. I thought we might get a bounce at this gap fill because if you roll out on the hourly, we had kind of a gap, a small gap fill right there. So far, there's no bounce. So, tells me there's likely just more selling gonna come into play. And a lot of that has to do with Nvidia, but as of right now, I'm just not seeing any real signs of a bounce. We are continuing to break. We do have, some bullish divergence on the hourly RSI. Nothing there on the PPO really, but slightly there on the RSI. It's not enough to tell me that we're gonna see that bounce quite yet. And then if I look at the daily chart, the bigger picture, because again, from a swing trading perspective, I try to point out the little hourly charts, 5-minute charts, the near-term short little bounces here and there if you're actively trading. But the longer-term stuff is really what's more at play, especially for those, 401k money or swing traders, trend traders, is we've got a big bearish engulfing right there on July 24th, and that has remained the top. We also have, we had this impulse, we hit the 200-day. Again, we were short, boom, went long there at the 200-day, rallied, started to rebuild a short position. Right about in here is really where I was starting to rebuild it. Rallied a little bit more, and then we got another bearish engulfing right there, and now we're seeing that continued sell-off. So bigger picture, I'm continuing to treat, really, this is the top. This is what I'm treating the top as. So, any shorts, you'd likely want to stop out above that high. If you get a daily close above there, we don't have that yet. Still have the potential for a bull flag, but this would be your flag pull. This is your flag, and then a continued push higher. I don't think that's going to play out. The flag's starting to kind of get negated the way it's starting to look. But it's possible. We'd have to rally really soon for that to play out. And yeah, so we have, from what I can tell, kind of an ABC pattern. We drop down, rally up, and we're continuing that downside push. The big thing, though, you got to see Nvidia break. So let me flip over to here. This is really going to be, I think, the tell for us in terms of, this is when the momentum dies. And when the momentum dies in Nvidia, again, I talked about this in my last video, how you've got Nvidia's indexed. It's the second largest company in the market, in the S&P 500, and it's indexed across a lot of different sectors, which as it sells off, it drags the rest, drags the sectors down. And as those sectors sell off, then they have to sell everything in that, everything that's indexed. Nvidia, though, on the daily chart is this uptrend line. So this is really where the momentum This is where the mania momentum started back in October of 2022. You can see right there, and then we started getting earnings, big earnings gaps and things like that. And that's really when people started to kind of go crazy on this one. So there's your support line, and I've got it kind of circled out. We held it again right there. That's support, and you can see we're basically, we're right on it or close to it now, coming to that support. So we got to break that upward trend line to define a break of trend and give us kind of a more longer term sell signal. And I don't think the bulls are going to just let that trend line break without a fight. So the way I really see it is, look, we hit the 200 and that trend line had a pretty impulsive bounce off of that, right? From the lows down there all the way to the highs, 40% bounce. I think the bounces will become smaller and more muted as we consolidate on the trend line and then ultimately break. But I'm thinking we probably get another bounce and, likely up to maybe about 117, 118, start to grind around this trend line and really start to build, consolidate, and then ultimately break the trend line. So for a trend trader, you need to see a break of that trend line. When that goes, the momentum will have shifted to the downside on Nvidia. And really, you really think about it, and Nvidia for the longest time was the only stock rallying. We had, one stock rallying, and there was a lot of comments saying, oh, all we need is one stock. Nvidia will do everything. So to me, it does look like we're losing momentum in the market leaders, Nvidia, and obviously the large cap tech stocks. And as the market leaders start to, lose that momentum, you just don't have the mathematical weighting in the other sectors to keep the markets up. All right. If the Mag 7 go down, if the money shifts and goes into, JP Morgan and financials and retail and wherever else it goes, the weighting's just not there. If there's big selling in these stocks, then it will drag the markets down because of the mathematical weighting that the indices have. Until they rebalance, that's what, how that's going to play out. Okay, so a quick look across some of these Mag 7s. Amazon, nothing technically broken here. We're still kind of holding this support line. We're above the 200, so I don't see any real damage there. Google, we'll look at this one, GOOGL. Google approaching the 200-day, so not there yet. Probably going to hit it today. Should see a bounce at that 200-day. Meta, no real, it's not a lot of selling here. It's just not technically significant. It's kind of just more of the same here in Meta. So I do think there is more downside, but yeah, we could pop up and make a new high. So in general, it's kind of flagging sideways. Microsoft dropping down to the 200-day. There is a downtrend line here. We're at the 200-day though. So when that breaks, that's going to be a significant technical change. But as of right now, holding that support. Apple breaking back down, kind of a false breakout right here over the last few days. This was like that thin holiday trading and everybody kind of waiting for Nvidia and the waiting and to see what's going on. Basically, we had Nvidia and we had the holiday trading, very thin. But today we're seeing some more impulsive price action breaking back below that support level, which is about 224.22. So we'll see how we close the day. We got about an hour and 15 minutes left in the regular session. If we close below, that's a false breakout. We should continue lower. Tesla above the 200-day, really nothing significant in that one. And then obviously we covered Nvidia really being the key here and coming down to major support. Not quite there yet. They might try to hold it right in here because if you look on the hourly chart on Nvidia, we'll double check that. Yeah, there was a little gap to fill. They're already kind of below it. So yeah, probably a little bit lower on Nvidia. And semiconductors, the SOXX falling down to the 200-day. It's slightly below it now, but oftentimes when you have a kind of a strong momentum day, you'll kind of undercut it. And I suspect they hold this, and then we see a bounce here, a mild bounce. I don't think it's going to be as large of a bounce, but I do think we will probably get a bounce here. The dollar continues to push higher. This is the hourly chart here, and I did talk about the dollar probably pushing up to about 102.12. And as the dollar goes up, it should put pressure on stocks. That's what I talked about last week, and that is what we're seeing obviously today. However, I am noticing on the dollar hourly chart now, we're starting to build some negative divergence here on the PPO, and we have it here on the RSI, or sorry, the RSI and the PPO. So that tells me we might see a pullback in the dollar and then get that rally in stocks. So that's the way I'm leaning right now, is, you know, another small rally in stocks before we continue the sell-off. Again, I don't think, and I have to kind of reiterate, so I can, you know, I got a lot of trolls here. They just kind of cherry pick what they want to hear. If I go to the daily chart here on triple Qs, we might take out these highs. I don't, you know, this bearish engulfing right here doesn't have to stay. All right, it's there. I'm not saying we're not going to take those out. I don't think we're going to take out these highs right here. I think that's the high in the market for, you know, at least for some time to come. So if we're going to rally, we could rally up. We might even test the highs or even see an intraday pop. It's about as much as I'd be willing to give it, because obviously you get close, you might want to run some stops and do an intraday pop. I don't think we're going to get a daily close up there. It's very possible we don't even break above these highs here. Gold and gold miners still kind of chopping around. Again, these are divergent highs. I pointed these out. Negative divergence, right? So that's a divergent high. Very high probability it gets sold into. So far, it's being sold into. So that's it. I don't see any indication that gold's going to continue to rally. Might make another divergent high. Probably going to get sold into. So it's just not a good long trade from my perspective right now. And I think it's got a decent ways to come down. So yeah, that's all I see in gold miners really. Wheat starting to look decent. Here's the futures, the ZW. You can see coming into some resistance right now. We've got, you know, just, you can see these reactions right here. So a little more upside and probably going to hit some resistance. So we'll need to see that breakout. It's about 573, 575-ish, right in there. And then on the ETN, the wheat ETN, kind of a comparable resistance zone, I would say, is roughly right about here. Oh, let me grab the right tool. It's about at 513-ish. So a break above that, this should push right to the 200-day. All right, and that would be a move. Let's just say the breakout there. That'd be about a 7-8% move up. So wheat's starting to look interesting, actually. And then let's go ahead and look at some individual trade ideas. GM, I've talked about this one. This one it's a very clean chart, to be honest. And so here's what I see. On the daily, support. All right, that even held support. Okay, the following day, it gapped down, but they ramped it up and it closed right on support. So that's a reaction, all right? The next day after that, right there, closing below support, that was your sell signal. Okay, and this thing from that sell signal fell straight down to the 200-day. Then the dip buyer stepped in, bought it at the 200. That makes sense. Ramped it right up into resistance. And you can see, boom, right into resistance. Tested it for 5 days. And actually 6, because it actually did a test today too. And as it was testing it, if you go down to the hourly chart, you'll see it was putting in negative divergence. So let's go ahead and drop down to the hourly. And there it is. Momentum's dropping off as it's testing, all right? Testing, divergent high, failed, all right? And then today, it's a failure, all right? So that's a sell signal. Let me go back to the daily chart. And you can see we also broke this uptrend line that it was ramping up on since hitting that 200-day moving average, kind of running up there. It broke that trend line really, yeah, it broke it today, all right? Even on Friday, it closed pretty much on that trend line. Today, clear sell signal. So that's as good as it gets on a scale of 1 to 10 for a sell signal. That's a 10, all right? That's a backtest of a major resistance line, negative divergence on the hourly chart, break of trendline support here. We should go lower. All right, so I'm short that one. JP Morgan, I'm kind of looking at that. What I'm noticing, actually, I just kind of picked it up, but You know, we saw tech sell off, Nvidia and stuff. I'm starting to see those. You know, there was this narrative where there was a rotation and a widening of breadth, things like that. I'm starting to see those ones start to sell off now too. So things like JP Morgan, General Motors, kind of non-tech stocks, starting to see those actually sell off. On JP Morgan, let me go to the daily chart here. All right, same thing. All right, you have this ramp up right there. Really started to break trend. I mean, you can see, look, we closed here, closed on it. Today, breaking down and clearly going to close. Unless they can ramp it up massively, which it's not going to happen, then this should be a sell signal on JP Morgan. The other thing that you'd want to notice is no negative divergence on the daily chart, really. But if I go down to the hourly, it probably has the same look as GM. It does. See, look, momentum just dropping off. If I can grab the stupid tool, there it is. Boom. All right, momentum dropping off. So these highs last week, low volume, divergent highs. We're seeing that get rejected. So very similar look. This one's not quite as good as GM because I don't have that major trend line. Let me just extend this out. We don't have that major trend line as resistance, but we do have kind of this uptrend line here that's breaking. So yeah, I think we're going to see some downside pressure in these. And here's your XLF, your financial sector. I could probably adjust this just slightly, maybe down to about there. But yeah, that looks decent to me, your XLF. You got support, and kind of right there at support. But you also have negative divergence on the hourly chart here building. So a break of this trend line, which maybe we get it today, we'll see, would be a sell signal in the financial sector, which I think is going to happen. Need to see that trend line break. And that's what it looks like on the daily. So still holding support. Need to see that trend line go. If it happens anytime soon, and you can kind of clear this. Let me clear these lines up. But on the daily chart, you'll notice, if it happens anytime soon, then we are going to have negative divergence on the daily RSI, not really on the PPO. You could extend it out maybe, but definitely on the RSI, so keep an eye out for that one. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. So again, the biggest thing to watch Nvidia, watch that major trend line on the daily chart. That's got to break for any kind of sustained sell-off, because if they come in and buy it, let me just flip over to the chart. If they come in and buy support, and we're not there yet. I mean, I think there's support down at this trend line, but in general, it's kind of in the range. They might step in early. If they come in and buy support and you see Nvidia kind of catching another bid, then the rest of the market's going to pay attention. They're going to notice, okay, momentum's still okay. We're not, buy the trend, buy the dip, and the market will likely hold up. So this is really the key from my perspective to the to the end of the rally, is you got to see Nvidia break this major trend line support. And if it does, you got the 200-day down below. They'll probably buy it at the 200. But in general, the major trend will have been broken. So what will happen, from my perspective, is we'll break trend, we'll flush right to the 200. They'll buy it, and we'll back test. And who knows how far the back test will run, but that's kind of what I'm expecting. So, okay, I'm going to wrap it up there. Catch you guys on the next.